Well, good day, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome again Tom Barnett. Welcome, Tom.
Thanks, Kathleen. Thank you. Good to be here.
Very good to see you again. This is the sixth of the interviews that I've been doing on women's worth, man's worth, the overfed body, the underfed soul. And the main topic and direction has been on the planned destruction of our men. And Tom and I today, Tom is a healthcare practitioner, as am I. Tom is in Australia. Most people who listen to you obviously know your background well. I'm coming from New Mexico, and before we start on our topic, which will be the art of intimacy during COVID, including the history of relationship, committed relationship, and taking a look at kind of the timeline and what's happened up until today and how that is affecting us. But before we get into that, Tom, would you maybe talk just a little bit about yourself for folks who are new to your work? And please, thank you.
Sure. Yeah. So I had a relatively normal childhood, normal schooling, normal family life. I always knew something wasn't quite right. So I always had this questioning mind, and that led me through a lot of interesting times through schooling and then through college. And then eventually I threw that whole system away to go into doing things for myself. And I ended up getting very sick in my early 20s though, because I was very out of balance. Funnily enough, with the topic of today, there was no intimacy with myself or with others, or was very cut off from that side of things, which led me to being very out of balance. And so through that experience, I had to find a lot more about how the mind, the body, and the soul all work together, the ways in which we're indoctrinated through the system to be removed from ourselves. And so my journey to healing myself was about coming back to myself and learning a lot about the mind, the body, and the way everything interrelates in the process. And then wanting to go into a more creative and modest field, I stopped being a health practitioner a number of years ago and moved into film and photography, and was just gardening as well for money, living very simply, living in a tent in the bushes on the beach. And then COVID happened, and I put out a video on viruses, and then it started to bring me right back into this area, which is talking more about natural health, natural law, and the body and the mind, the way they work together.
Very fine. And I really appreciated in our interviews and getting to know you more and understanding your perspective and how holistic you are in your approach to life. Including understanding our empowerment from a legal perspective, so the common law, and to not leave that element out, because it's as if one's sitting on a two-legged stool. Otherwise, I mean, we have to embrace as it used to be, participating in everything that makes up our life in order to have a balanced life. And as a result of that, becoming empowered and truly understanding. So you've been a real example of that empowerment in that process and that growth. And so thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So let's start with the art of intimacy. And when I think about intimacy between a man and a woman, I think about it as from a very sacred place, and that it has to build, it has to grow. It doesn't just snap into place. It's like a friendship that again, it doesn't just happen overnight. And it's something about, it has to do with trust, and it has to do with learning about the other person, but also through knowing our own self. Could you talk a little bit about what you consider an intimate relationship to be from your perspective, please?
Yeah, so we'll preface it with it's from my perspective, not necessarily this is the definition everybody should follow.
No,
So
yours.
yeah, so from my perspective, uh, it's feeling yourself and the other to a pure state or a pure sense. So what that means is that we may feel we're intimate with people because there's lust or attraction or anything along those lines, but that's not necessarily intimacy. And so intimacy is where we are able to lay down a lot of the external, the protective mechanisms, and we can get more to the heart. So the heart of ourself, the heart of the other, and then there's generally a third party in a relationship, and that's love itself. So when people can learn to dedicate or to love and dedicate to love, as opposed to just dedicating to another being, then that's to me where intimacy can be found all of the time. And it's not necessarily just love making, obviously. It's the way that you interact in every moment. Even if you were having an argument, you could still be intimate and not go cold and not disconnect. So intimacy is really about a connection and finding your own and the other's heart and staying there.
And I mean, that's profound and deep and chilling in all at the same time, because what that means is truly being open to understanding the depth of that. Because so often in a man and a woman coming together, we will be sidetracked by the sensual and move into a sexual relationship early on. I mean, I think that's been more often than not over the last, I don't know, 50 years. I mean, it used to be that people had a more of a courtship traditionally, I think. But then we're going to take a look at some of the traditional historical relationships as well. But so maybe talk a little bit to that as well, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, sure. I think, well, so there's many facets to this. One is the control state, which generally comes from the religious bodies. So the religious bodies want to control the nature of our lust and sensuality and intimacy by making things right and wrong. But then from a societal point of view as well, it was actually not a great idea to engage in sexuality early, because what if a kid comes along, because there wasn't birth control. So from the, the invention or the having birth control come in, whether it's a pill, it's medication or prophylactics or whatever, then that changed the nature of sexuality. And then what may have been repressed for a long time was just now a free for all, where, you just eye someone across the room, oh, hey, let's go to the bathroom, and because it's almost like consequence-free sexual intercourse. So people can then indulge in what's right in front of them. What is this feeling that's just right there on the surface? I can now indulge that without consequence. Whereas before you'd have to think about it, at least to a degree. And so that's removed now. Before you would need to, go ahead.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, so before you would need to think about that at least, or at least the woman would, because the man can quite often just do what he likes and then just bugger off to another town and forget about it all. But for the woman, that's like at least an 18-year commitment. So a woman would generally be a lot more, no, let's not do that unless she's inebriated or unless you want, for whatever reason. Anyway, it's too complex to go into human dynamic, but that's one of the main things that changed. The religious structure was there to control part of the population as well. To some actually said it was a good idea to bring forth children, to have many, large families. Others control, no more than one or two. There's different ways to go about things. But either way, there's a disconnection between the individual and the creator or the source of life. And then something else gets in the way. A church, a religion, a government, an ordained minister of some kind, a spiritual guru, they get in the way between somebody's connection to the source, which is essentially a connection to the self. There's something in the way as a filter. to stop the natural messages getting through. So I think promiscuity and intimacy are opposite ends of the spectrum. I think you may feel you're being intimate with somebody who you've just met and is promiscuous, but I think they're very different energies at different ends of a spectrum. And one is fleeting and one is deep, like a slow burn as opposed to a quick flame. I think that, to me, that's what it represents to me. And so with the changes that we've gone through from heavy indoctrination into a more free society, into a hypersexualization of things through marketing, advertising, social media, film, music, film clips, magazines, it's all there to titillate the senses for men and for women. And for women to kind of fall into a way of being, whereas it used to be, the prude, long skirts, don't show your ankles, don't give too much away, to like, pretty much wearing no clothes at all a lot of the times, and a lot of movement in the hips and things, even in the street, just because that's what you see. It's liberating now. I think that's twisted too. It's like you were suppressed, now be liberated, but I don't think it's liberation. I think that's all very confusing for women, especially. And then for men, it's they're taken out of what they're supposed, which we've already discussed. Anyway, a lot of confusion on both sides. And to me, I think because your topic is intimacy, I think it's important for people to realize that intimacy, to me at least, is a much deeper feeling than that, the sensory, it's just very quick to excite the senses. I don't think that's intimacy.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. So, here we are at a time when, worldwide, historically, from the beginning of time, no matter what the race, no matter what the culture, no matter where in the world or where in history, the relationship and intimacy is a common denominator for us as human beings. It's age old, and it's right here in our in our worlds. And so obviously it really matters. It's not something simple. And as human beings, we have evolved through caring and responsibility. You and I would not be here if someone hadn't cared, hadn't been responsible, hadn't brought our ancestry forward. We just wouldn't be here. So there's a tremendous amount of there, and yet we're right now at a time in history where there are elements of control that are working to absolutely destroy intimacy with social distancing and face masks, so we can't look into one another's faces and see the full expression on the mouth, and even the eyes are changed when a mask is worn. Can you talk a little bit to the implication of all of that?
Yes, well, it's very well known that we need that connection. And to your point, actually, I think it's important to, because I didn't say it earlier, to mention that intimacy and sexuality are two very different things. You can be intimate with a stranger of the same sex, because it's literally about the seeing. Are you seen? And that's really the intimacy. And so putting a mask on, for example, and social distancing, it's very much the opposite of connection and being seen. So that's obviously by design, to take away our core needs as human beings. Those are some of our core needs. And so then we feel distance, and much easier to be separated, obviously, because if there's no intimacy, there's usually no connection. So then there's separation, because when you're not connected, you're obviously separated. You're one or the other. So then, I mean, we all know that this is the game that they're playing. But the actual implications are very much that we are removed, not just from each other, but as a result from ourselves. We're therefore not as grounded in ourselves. We're not as connected to anything. And so that, to me, is, it's a very smart move on their part to play that card. And the sad part is that a lot of people know that anyway. The reason we know it is because it is in our blood, it's in our DNA. Even for people that weren't responsible and they just had a kid, they didn't even want a kid, it was an accident. To me, and this is only to me, I feel that our ancestry called us forward. If that was the case, my parents planned me, but at the same time, even if they didn't, I would feel that my ancestry called me forward. Doesn't matter if my parents wanted it or not. Doesn't matter. It was important for me to be here, and I was called forward from that to serve a purpose, right? So I don't believe anybody's an accident in any way, shape, or form. And so in our DNA is that ancestry, our bloodline, our remembering who we are, where we came from, and what purpose we serve. And so even those that are buying into some of the propaganda, a lot of them don't really want the mask on, but they do it just to not rock the boat. But they feel it as well. On some deep level, they feel that it's not right. It's the soft introduction to transhumanism. So, they want to change our DNA and our coding and all that and make us non-human. But the beginning of that is to be masked. That's non-human as well. Where is your expression? Where is the feeling? Where's the connection and intimacy? It's gone. Therefore, now we're moving into transhumanism and getting used to it in a soft way before it becomes normal for us to be cyborgs or AI controlled or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well put. It's just to share a little of my own experience. I live very remotely on the land, and one of the things that I'm kind of noticing is, as in New Mexico, there's a shift, and now where 99.999% of the people were masked, now maybe only a third of them are masked. And some places you go and they're still requiring masks, and other places no, and the owners of the stores and the madness of it all is there's no logic to any of it. And as a logical person, I find that in and of itself difficult. It's like there's no continuity in terms of direction of what they're doing. I sense as if they're attempting to unsettle everyone, from the most logical to those that are, the most submissive. And so here we're beginning to get our, the capacity to be able to interact without masks more, but there's still when is the other shoe going to drop? And that has a weight for me. I feel that. Do you have a response to that in terms of some thoughts of your own?
Are you talking about that while they might be lifting mask wearing in some places, that something bigger is coming to follow it, and you're a bit trepidatious, like, oh, it's still not safe. It's like it's the eye of the twister, and you're still about to go through.
Oh, yes, because I don't sense that there's any intention of letting up in their direction toward transhumanism and AI. And so, there's this illusion that things are becoming more open, and that in and of itself, it carries its own trickery. So, my own sense of trust, which intimacy for me is based upon trust. And I sense, and I don't work from a compartmentalized place. So I have a sense of my own trust being challenged, because I ultimately sense that something is going to, the carpet's going to be pulled out one way or another. And I mean, they're not giving up. And so with intimacy in my world being all about trust, and this external narrative is challenging trust in my world, I feel it in a way that is deeper and bigger than I ever would have imagined. And I work to center myself every day. Can you, do you have some thoughts on that concept?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because trust, and I totally agree. And it's more from a woman's perspective than a man's, to be honest, is the trust. But I get that completely because I deal with a lot of people who, for women, it's the key thing. A woman can't give up and be intimate if there's no trust. It's just unless she's super disconnected. And yeah, so the connection part's interesting, which I'll get back to. But you're right. It's the more you give misdirection, the more you create confusion, the more you drop trust away because people are always just, yeah, but is it? But I don't know, but is it? But what, you're never settled. So then the trust isn't there. And therefore, you're ungrounded essentially. And it does take away intimacy, as you say. So one of the elements to that I feel is the most important is grounding. If you are grounded, you're not then blown around in the breeze. Today you have to wear masks, tomorrow you don't. But what's coming? Is there a vaccine? Or is this, are we locked down or are we free? That's all being blown around in the breeze like a paper bag. But if you're grounded, they can play all the games they like, but you're resolutely here and you're not perturbed by that. And then when you're grounded, then the trust comes from something deeper. It doesn't come from something fleeting like the news or the government or whatever. It comes from a much deeper place, which is very powerful. And that you can have a deep trust in because it'll never let you go. But that takes some work too, is to move out of that world of, giving up all of your responsibility to being more self-responsible. So that's a journey in itself. And then other people gain their trust from others. So I think in that respect, it's important to surround yourself with people who are good people and trustworthy. Because then if you haven't yet found your feet and found your groundedness to, I find it through nature, just the earth itself.
Yeah.
If you haven't found that, then should at least surround yourself with others. And people who it's like, it's being selective, I guess, is what I'm saying. Being selective about what you expose yourself to. Turn off the news, don't look at that kind of stuff because that will confuse you and remove trust and remove intimacy and connection from yourself and those around you. So develop that with a select group of people or a select website or a select individual you get or group of people you get your information from. And that way it can be you're much more discerning about what comes in, and therefore you're less likely to be blown around, and you can get your grounding and your trust through others that you trust in if you haven't got it yourself yet, much like a kid.
Right. Well, that brings up something very interesting that you said, that trust is more of a woman's element rather than a man's. So in an intimate, committed relationship, what are the elements that need to be there for a man? And how does a man go about seeking or finding that kind of relationship?
Oh, wow. That could take an hour.
Well, yes, I know. Well, chew off what you want.
Yeah, I know what you're asking. So first of all, what does a man need? A man really, and I guess I'll just speak for myself more than anything, because I know there's always people that say, oh, but that's not me. But, having done a lot of work with various men, I'll say that most men are simple, very, very simple. So when a woman will say that, a woman sometimes, quite often actually, doesn't necessarily say exactly what she means, but a man does. And if a man says that, or a man says, all I need is this and that, then there's no other hidden things that he's hoping will be fulfilled. It's literally just what he says. And for most men, what they need from a woman is affection, mostly like the affection, the feminine, those feminine qualities. That's what a man needs from a woman. And so if he's getting that, he's quite happy and content. He doesn't need her to be anything special or to do anything special. It's more just being met, those feminine qualities. If those are brought forth to him, he's generally happy. So a man needs to trust a woman as well. And that means that she needs to be there for him if needed. And a lot of times as a man, it's kind of like, you do your own thing and you don't really need others in that regard. But to develop deeper levels of intimacy and therefore trust, you do need to know that she can be at least somewhat responsible for some things. I mean, men and women are very different like that. One of my favorite, I don't know if it's a book or just an audio recording. It's called Understanding Women. I'm not sure of the lady's name, Alison, someone or other. She studied men in particular for 15 years and then now teaches the dynamic between men and women. And she's really spot on with, it's really great program that she's got. And she highlights the huge differences between men and women, where we think that the other thinks like us. So why aren't you doing that? Or why would you not do that? That's just, I would never do that. But that's because we're very, very different. So from a man's point of view, I guess it is just about that softness and freely giving that to the man without pulling it away or redirecting it somewhere else. That's really important. And just for her to be there for him. That's the trust. That's where the trust comes from a man. It's a different way that a woman develops or needs trust from a man, but from a man, that's essentially what we need. And so how does a man find or look for that intimacy in a committed relationship? Well, a lot of it is having to give up many preconceived ideas of what that might actually be. Not trying to pin her to the wall, like this is what it will be, and this is what you'll look like, and this is what I will do. It's very much an adaptive, free-flowing experience between yourself and the other, and coming to understand the other, or at least, you know, the differences. Understand the differences. So we're not trying to project onto them. A man doesn't see a woman as just a softer version of him, because she's not that. She's completely different. And if you don't get her in ways, it'll cause a lot of conflict, and the conflict then will prevent intimacy. And then the mind wonders, well, maybe she's not the right one. Maybe better will come along. You know, it's funny because when people are set up in arranged marriages, sometimes those are the most committed and loving. Sometimes, not always. But you would think that if it was a matter of you have to find the exact right one, tick off all the boxes. No, she doesn't have that color hair. She's off the table. She's too tall or too short. I don't like her parents. I don't like her religious background. You just cross people off. But you see so many arranged marriages where intimacy is developed because trust is developed, and they become very loving, committed relationships. And having seen enough of that, I actually think you can develop that.
Yes.
As I said earlier, you can develop intimacy with anyone, same sex, different sex, no matter what. So realistically, you could develop trust, intimacy, sensuality, and a committed relationship with almost anybody if you dedicate to doing that. And to do that, particularly as a man, women generally are much more feeling and connected to themselves. A man needs to die many deaths. If he's to find success in a committed relationship and always have intimacy and trust, a man's going to need to die many deaths.
What do you mean die many deaths?
Well, the part of us that needs to just give in to the feminine. So it's said by many people that, I'm not a teacher of this, I've just studied other people's works, and many people say that man is consciousness and woman is power. And so the masculine and the feminine, for example. And so the man needs to find a way to literally just dive in there. It's like trust and absolutely just, that could be death. That could mean death, but he has to be okay with that. And in the process, those parts of the man that needs to just control and to compartmentalize and to disconnect, needs to die off. So you imagine you dive into an ocean, you don't know what's under the surface. Are there sharks? Is it shallow like that onto a jagged reef? You know, is it a depth to who knows where, kilometers deep? You don't know. And a man actually has to take that dive, which could mean death. If it's the wrong thing, he could die, but he has to be willing for that to happen. Until he's willing for that to happen, he won't fall into that depth of intimacy and trust that is required, that the feminine requires. The feminine actually usually requires a man to do that. And she needs to be there to catch him, kind of thing, you know, like if she's the right one, he will live, but he has to be prepared to die in order for that to open.
So that's the man really stepping into his power, his warrior posture, and willing to go the full distance.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And willing to, that, and that is that element of commitment, right? That's a full commitment. You can't dive into the ocean and still have one foot on the cliff. Hey, maybe that girl over there, she's a bit younger, or their family has more money, or whatever it might be for a man. You know, the status kind of element of it. So yeah, it really is that. That's the commitment, and that's how you find. When you say find, how does a man find that? Well, he finds it in himself. Am I willing to die for this woman? For the feminine, not this woman. Remember, the woman is not, the man is not to love the woman like Kathleen who looks like this. He is to love the feminine. The feminine is showing up as Kathleen. So yeah, he obviously loves you as well, but it's this, the journey or the practice is to love and give completely to the feminine, which just happens to show up as the woman that's in front of you.
Oh, okay. Um, and so in that very sacred relationship, in that union, we've seen a divorce rate absolutely skyrocket. So here we have something that's so sacred, and bringing together two people whose relationship to themselves, their empowerment, their spiritual understanding and centeredness, and yet we're at a time in 2021 where, and I think this statistic has been holding for some time, where the divorce rate, at least in the United States, is like 50%.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's really quite shocking to think that, going back to the fact that, you know, relationship, intimate relationship, committed relationship, it's been historically something that we've sought from the beginning of time. And so how in the world do you see this break happen, and where do you see it beginning, and how it has brought us to a time now where really there's a lot of confusion, a lot of people who have sought what we're talking about, you know, intimacy and committed relationship, but don't know how to maintain.
Yeah. Yeah. The maintain part is the interesting element of it, isn't it? It's like,
Well, it is.
it can be easy at the start because there's so much of that lust and love and all the bubbly stuff there. And that can absolutely maintain, but it does take, I mean, people say relationships take work, and I tend to agree, but I don't like the way that sounds. It takes commitment, I think. Like anything, like to become a great musician, it takes commitment. It's not, you don't want to see it as work. It should be a joy. Commitment's a joy. It's like, I love playing the instrument. You know, I love my partner. It shouldn't be like, oh yeah, it's a lot of work with my woman. She's really a lot of work.
Yeah, it does carry a pretty heavy connotation to the whole thing.
Yeah, but there's a few elements to your question as far as I can tell. Again, it's just my experience. I'm not saying this is the exact answer, but from what I can tell, a lot of it has come about from the move from the very defined masculine and feminine throughout the ages to this gray area, which we've spoken about in our previous interviews, which is where the masculine is like afraid to be masculine. The feminine wants to be more like the masculine. So we don't have defined roles or defined polarities. Those polarities are what make a relationship work, you know? And when that's gone and it's this mute thing in the middle, there's no magnetism. It's just like it falls apart, because it used to be that a woman couldn't support herself. She needed the man. The man needed to provide. And that's the nature of the masculine. It's funny, if you ask men, it's a duty. And women don't realize that because, again, you know, we're different. We're just different. There's more honor in a man. And it's not to say that's a negative thing about a woman. It's just part of the qualities and the reason that we fit together. But a man will look after his family even if he doesn't want to. Generally speaking, the feminine, if she doesn't want to do it, she won't. She doesn't like someone, she won't. It'll, you know, but a man just will because it's a duty. And so there is this inbuilt mechanism for us to do that. But these days, women can make as much or way more than men. And so there's an element where she's like, well, I don't need you to provide. But then on this body mind that still speaks the old language, she does need him to provide in different ways. And there's confusion that can come in there. And then that's only one element, the provision. There's so many elements that men are losing their masculinity and to be becoming more feminine, for example. And then it's confusing that where's that dynamic then where you need that the femininity and the softness from the woman. So I've seen a lot of divorce come in because of that confusion. We don't have such defined roles, and logically we're kind of like, I don't need the other. But to the inbuilt DNA self, we still do. And then there's a rift and confusion. And then it's like we can have it any way we want. Now, first world problems where people then say, well, I don't know what to study. I don't know if I should go to college or should I just work? Or what should I study? There's 250 courses I could study. Whereas back in the day, it was like, all right, my dad was a Boilermaker, I'll be a Boilermaker. Or my uncle was a carpenter, so I've got a choice of carpentry or Boilermaking. Whereas these days it's like, well, I could do 1,000 courses and some people end up doing nothing. There's too much choice. So again, like with the cross-pollination of races as well, where you now have, a lot of mixed race kids. Nothing wrong with that, but there's this element where there's so much choice now. And choice can be paralyzing for people and also disconnect from the purity of the commitment that you once made, because now you're seeing people left, right, and center, and you've got Tinder and you've got Facebook and you've got Instagram, and it's just a little confusing for people to still stay in the commitment. And so the divorce rates, I think, come because you think you don't really need, it's not like a need anymore. It's like, yeah, well, we could just get divorced. It's no big deal. Like the sanctity of what was is just like, it's just, here's one certificate, here's the other. There's nothing in deeper than it's just a certification these days. So it's easily thrown to the breeze. Oh yeah, what you haven't been divorced yet? What are you doing? I'm on my third marriage, that kind of thing.
Tom, how in the world did we get to that point where it's not a big deal? How is it? How is it that something so sacred? Because when we are in an intimate, committed relationship and we truly experience the care and actually that makes me think of the Bohemian Grove. Have you heard of that?
No.
In Northern California. There's some really interesting videos on it. And so the Bohemian Grove is quite well known in this country. And the presidents and corporate leaders have gone there for many decades. And they have these eulogies called the burning of care. And quite literally, they burn care. And when I think of an intimate, committed relationship, there's that care is an integral part of it. And even today, during this whole pandemic, people hang on to their phones and they photograph injustices, but they don't step in and express their care. There's a sense that they're doing something by filming it. In fact, they're separating themselves and there's no interaction, there's no intimacy with even a stranger where, we can have that by caring. So do you talk a little bit on that element?
Yeah, I completely agree. I hadn't thought of it that way, but that resonates a lot. Absolutely. And so, yeah, that element of care, and that's what I mean, when a man would provide for the woman and the woman would look after and care for the man, it was just that dynamic, it's care. And so I think the false expectations are one of the reasons that things end in, is two things, right? You're talking about divorce. The divorce rate is 50%. That's not necessarily the breakup or the separation rate, because that's just pertaining to people who married. And marriage in itself is it's an institution. It's not necessarily a sacred bond entered into in the first place. And like the not taking responsibility Oh, you just froze. There you go. It's like they're not taking responsibility for the self with your health or natural law or anything like that. It's the same with marriage. It's like, I love this other and I want to spend my life with them, but now I'm engaging something else. And it's almost like the virtue of a ring, of a symbology and a certificate and the state saying this, then we're committed. But that's not it. Because then, I really feel that the people that I've met, I've met a lot of married people that are happy as well. But the ones that are the happiest didn't go that route because they just did what is essentially a divine union between them and the other. And that's sacred and can't be broken. So a marriage certificate can be annulled. A ring can be taken off and pawned off at the pawn shop, but that sacred connection, that sacred union can't, that's there. That's like that's a real contract. That's a real commitment. And that's not to say that getting married cannot do that. If the intention is the same and it's the rings and the certificate and the ceremony go with it, that's fine, as long as that purity of connection and intention are the same. So I feel one of the reasons that marriages end up in such a high divorce rate is because people haven't entered into it on a proper heart-to-heart level, and they've involved something else, which is an institution and can very easily collapse. And therefore the marriages don't work out. And for many other reasons, but that's one of the main ones.
Good, very good points. Very good points. We're getting close to our to our time. I don't want to go too long on this, but could you talk a little bit about the entering into an intimate committed relationship, and then along the way a platonic relationship begins to evolve. And I became aware of that many years ago in talking to some friends of mine, and I was rather surprised because it wasn't something that I had really thought of. But I, over the years, have seen that happen a lot, where this sacred, loving, intimate, committed relationship becomes rather dulled, and to the point of two people just kind of living together, and that kind of deadness leads a lot of people to leave relationships. But how does one continue to keep that alive? And I know you've touched on that earlier in our conversation, but it to me seems like such a critical element, and maybe a good one to end the conversation on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's there's a lot of different ways to answer that, but realistically, it is a choice every day where people wake up and they choose to be in it together and always finding something. So one of the reasons that we are blocked from intimacy or connection is because of what's in us. It's all of our shadow, our trauma, our whatever you want to call that, the crud that blocks us from a free-flowing source connection and groundedness. So it's part of that is not resting on our laurels, so to speak. Just because we age another decade, it doesn't mean we're a decade more developed. If we're just repeating the same patterns, we're no better off than we were 10 years ago. And so we need to be burning through some of this crud. And that's part of a man's job, is to continually die and die, so that crud inside is, it can fall away and be burnt through. For the woman as well, obviously, it's not just one individual's job. And so in that respect, the things that block us from continuing to deepen into love with each other and connection and union and commitment, they burn away. And as they burn away, there's nothing holding us back. And I know exactly what you're talking about. I see it all the time, where it was almost like there was love, but not the genuine connection, commitment in the beginning. So over time, that just becomes, more platonic. It's convenient. Hey, we've shared kids together. We share a house together. We may as well just continue to share it. Still good friends, but beyond that, there's no physical intimacy anymore. But it's not an age thing. People assume incorrectly that that's just part of aging. You lose you lose that. It's like, oh yeah, well, that was all down here in this lower center, and now I'm up here. We're just more heart connected now and connected intellectually, but that's not true. You want to say something, I want to hear what you want to say.
Well, no, I'm really appreciating what you're saying, because you're spot on.
Yeah, so it's definitely the physical intimacy will remain, and that's one you see it and you recognize it. If you see 90-year-olds walking around holding hands, looking lovingly into each other's eyes, even as a young man who's like, oh, that's gay or whatever, like as a 18-year-old guy that's just like, no, only like, I would still feel like, oh, I love seeing that. Even as a young man, I would love seeing that, because I recognize that that's what it's about. It's not what I see my parents doing. I know that's a sham. They won't tell me it is, but I know it. That's why I'm confused, because I can see what's going on, but people are pretending different, and I don't actually know what the answer is yet. But then I see these 90-year-olds loving each other, and I go, that's it. I know it. I don't have to, no one has to tell me. I feel it. That's the truth. And so when you see people stop being physically intimate, you're like, nah, something wrong there.
Well, it is. And, it's almost as if they have their own built-in social distancing. But to me, it's the breakdown. It's the breakdown of our lives when we begin to enter into something so sacredly, and we don't understand how to continue to feed that and take it forward into something with much greater depth, because in a lot of ways, we've been taught mediocrity across the board, to expect our bodies to age and to be sick by the time we're 60, or to no longer have any desire for a sexual relationship with the person that we've been in with for 30 or 40 or 50 years. And we've really been conditioned. And I think so much of what we need to realize is what you say. We wake up each day and we choose what it is we want to bring forward that day. And it is from our inner core. So our work comes here. And as we started kind of early on, it's the centering and that empowerment that matters, because no one can make you happy and no one can make me happy. That's our individual responsibility. But we can share our happiness with others, whether it's an intimate physical relationship with someone else, or it's a friendship that's platonic. It can still have that wonderful intimacy. And the word intimacy is curious, because in some ways intimacy to me suggests a physical intimacy, but it can be a mental in a connection as well, as you well described.
Yeah, it can be many forms of intimacy, absolutely. And sometimes that's the way back. If people have lost that, let's say they've been together for 40 years and they're aged now, and they assume that it's just that the physical intimacy is gone, you can always get it all back. And it does come down to, like you say, trust, but it can come down to finding intimacy on a different level. So finding it in the intellectual, or the mind, the mental intimacy, and then the emotional, and then the physical and the spiritual. Like if you're doing that dance, you will find it, and it is a choice. It's one of those things that if you've felt it before, it's always there. What gets in the way of it is us. And if we don't communicate properly over time, then that starts to separate us. We don't really tell our partner what we really want, or what can they do to, like, what do we need from them, and what do they need from us, so we can always meet each other. And it's literally a choice. If we want to, we can find the intimacy, the connection, and the sensuality. It's at any age. It's not supposed, like you said, we're conditioned to think that at a certain age my body won't function anymore, but that's not true. That's a conditioning which we can call into reality. And so how do we get it? If we've lost it, how do we get it back? Or how do we make sure we never lose it in the first place, knowing that it can be maintained forever? Well, it is an eternal thing in and of itself. And so tapping into that is all it takes. But we really need to always get out of our own way. We block that, and we know it. Everybody knows the experience of having a bit of an argument with their partner, and then, you know, the idea of being touched by them is repulsive for a man or a woman sometimes. You know, repulsive might be a strong word, but you're not feeling it. You're not feeling like the
Yeah,
attraction, the physical attraction. But then it comes back when you bridge, when you mend that. And so over time, the thing is, if you leave things unchecked, then it's like anytime she leaves the toothpaste lid off the toothpaste, or anytime he doesn't take the bins out when I think he should, it's like all these crazy small things over years and years and years, when not met and bridged in the moments and been open in communication, then that's what will tear down intimacy, and you end up just living in a house together, and you know, everything that goes along with just a platonic relationship. So it's a commitment also to being pure and open and communicate with the other, and therefore asking ourselves, what do we really need from the other? What is it that we require in order to be our best self for them as well? So, and that's really it. And that's the commitment to, it's the commitment to the relationship as well. You know, as I said, it's not just the commitment to your partner, it's the commitment to love itself, and a commitment to the masculine, a commitment to the feminine, that you are going to continually live for that, or die for it, or dive into it. And that is what keeps that spark there. That's when if you ask anybody that's gone decades and decades and is still in a very loving, committed relationship, that's what they'll say. You've probably spoken to a lot of people, and I have too. It's this, they always say it's partly it's a choice. It's dedication to the love, not just to the other. It's always finding a way. And that's part of it too. Always finding a way, not being apathetic. So apathy can creep into many things. And then we just, you know, run stories about, oh, well, that's just the way it is. We also run stories about the other all the time. Well, they did this 20 years ago, so therefore they mustn't love me because of that. Or they'll always do that. They'll never be there for me. That's all stories we run. And these are the elements we need to burn through. We need to remove these stories that we project onto the other about who or what they are, what they will or will not do. That separates us as well. So yeah, and I love the way you use the analogy of we end up social distancing ourselves. We kind of do that to ourselves. It doesn't take government to do it. So a lot there for people to, you know, really come into is to find, it's the connection and groundedness, first and foremost, to the self, commitment to moving through your own elements that you need to burn through. I really feel that that's why when somebody becomes celibate and they commit themselves purely to God, there's nothing wrong with that. But in my experience, you can feel a free vessel, but it might be a trick, because one of the gifts that the partner gives us is that there's some things that are just like, ugh! And we don't burn through those sitting on a mountain meditating and just talking to God. We get that through the loving, committed, and it's not they are there to test us, but when you dive into that, they're actually there to help you through it. It's like this double-edged thing. But when we go, no, you just trigger me, or you whatever, that can cause conflict and disconnection. So there's so much gift in the committed relationship. And I'll tell you one thing, I guess, one thing that I think is really important is that people need to realize that they are worth it in the first place. If you always carry the idea you're not worthy of it, you'll push it away. Doesn't matter how open, how loving, how nurturing or perfect the other might be. If you can't accept it, you can't have it, and you'll break the relationship. You will never form that fully committed relationship. And I'm saying that from my own experience. It took me a long time to be able to enter into that, because I never thought, what would somebody want with me? Because, you know, I had a mother with postnatal depression. You get rejected by your mother. You just assume that the feminine is not, like, you're not good enough for it or whatever. So that's something that's big for men, is for a woman, it's, yeah, women get hurt a lot, but women are also a lot more resilient in that, and more connected to their emotional center. It's usually from the masculine point of view, and that's what I mean about being willing to die. That's why a man needs to do that, because he can have gone through that where he's not good enough, or for whatever reason has been rejected by the feminine. Then the masculine comes to the fore. You don't need that anyway. You know, I've got a spear, I've got a shield, I'm good. I can hunt my own food, you know. So then he needs to also go through that warrior death to
Right,
dive
right.
into that with the feminine.
Very, very fine. Well, do you have any other thoughts that you want to share before we say, I think we've taken a look at this subject?
Yeah, just thinking back on what we've discussed, I think there was a lot there, but there's also so much that wasn't there because it's such a big, it's almost like that whole thing of the finger pointing away to the moon. We can really talk about it and allude to it, but people need to find it themselves. I think listening to a podcast of some kind is very helpful. I learn a lot listening to others talk about love and relationship and men and women and the differences. I do learn a lot. But at the end of the day, I have to experience it for myself and live that with my partner. And and when I was on my own, I still had to find that in myself. And you're going to find something different for you as well. But it's, we can only ever allude to, it's not like nutrition where we can talk about the things that this will help inflammation, that'll help this, it's like, that's nuts and bolts. And you can talk about that and you can listen to it and I'll implement that and that'll cure this and that will work. But when we're talking about this, we can only really ever allude to the intimacy, to the love, to the how to stay together. And then it's really that personal journey, which is actually very exciting if you look at it that way as well.
Mhm. Very, very nice. And I think today in particular, given the circumstances, because this unfolding into transhumanism it's really anti-life, it's anti-love. So it really is requiring for us to look so deeply inside to really understand that this attack against something so fundamentally basic to each and every man and each and every woman, it's at this attack is at the core of our being, and it's what we are, we're worthy of this, and it's a necessary sustenance for us because it does feed our life through love. And if everyone just recognizes that a little bit more in their spiritual involvement, I think we can take this whole thing back in a way that can blow all these others to smithereens, and this transhumanism can go over there and we can just flourish in our seeking of this intimate connected relationship to one another, because it seems to be where our true greatness lies.
Absolutely. But to the earth as well, because the earth is the mother. I think it needs not just to each, I totally agree with everything you just said. And one of the ways though that I found that I became more able to have a committed relationship to another is the fact that I deepened my connection to the earth, that groundedness.
Yes, and if you look at the Gnostics and the whole pagan period of time, that triangulation was man, woman, nature.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a third party there, but that third party was our connection to nature and the energy, the frequency of nature of which we are a part. And that part has been exploded apart. And so, yes, I agree with you. Nature is at the core of all of this, and within ourselves as well.
Yeah, for sure. And mostly because nature always overcomes man's stupidity, which is something I've been saying a lot recently. Like, you see an oil slick or you see a decimated area, and then before long, new shoots are coming through, trees are overtaking the cement. Like, nature knows how to overcome. So when we do have that and nature can guide us, it can guide us, like you said, blast through transhumanism, because the love that nature has for us and we have for it, and it's the same thing, the love of nature will always overcome man's egoic stupidity of mind that creates false gods, false deities, false everything, like the transhumanism. And love and nature will overcome that. We just have to commit to love and nature.
I agree. Well, Tom Barnett, thank you for another wonderful interview, and my very best to you, and we'll talk again.
Yeah, thanks, Kathleen. Appreciate it.
Thank you.